Looks like the Kansas City Royals, after months and months and months of drama and uncertainty, are going to do the right thing. And that is, if they're going to leave Kauffman Stadium, which they are going to do, unfortunately, they are at least picking a choice that makes the most sense, not just for them as a baseball team, but also as a taxpayer in Jackson County. Good morning. Happy Tuesday. It's great to be here on KCMO Talk Radio. So the Kansas City Star is reporting through its sources that when the Royals have their press conference today at 2:30 at Kauffman Stadium, they will be picking between, of course, the old Kansas City Star building just south of T-Mobile Center, or that site in East Village that's gotten talked about for the better part of a year plus. Well, the Star is reporting that their choice is going to be the Crossroads District, of course, that old Star building right south of Power and Light and T-Mobile on the north end of Crossroads. And of the two options, as I've said for a long time, many weeks on this show since that option came to be, that was the far superior location. And it's not even close. So when I'm looking at these two options, I was saying to myself, East Village, there's nothing there. It's a made-up part of town that's got a lot of homeless shelters and is not a part of town that a lot of people want to go to. And then you have this old Kansas City Star building. You know, of course, the newspaper left it back in 2021, 2021, excuse me, that the Star left that building. And it's a great location. You know, you're driving right there, south side of the loop. You can't miss it. Prime time, right between Crossroads and downtown. There's a lot of appeal to that said location to begin with.
That's my parking spot for T-Mobile, by the way. It's going to go away.
It's going to go away. Mark, you'll maybe if you're knocking it out of the park today on the board, I might tell you my secret parking spot. We got a deal?
Sounds good.
All right. Press those buttons like the best board op you are.
My secret, I just keep walking. The price goes down $5 the further you go north, so I'm not above walking 2 blocks for the $5.
Well, yes. And by the way, all the parking, all our secret spots are probably going to be up for grabs if the Royals end up moving to that location. So, you know, we know the city of Kansas City, Missouri wants to build this $200 million park in that kind of right over that South Loop. And it would effectively connect Crossroads to downtown. And you'd have all the fancy apartments that are there being connected to another part of the city. You'd have the beautiful park, and now you'd have this baseball stadium. So it works. If you are a taxpayer and you're looking at this from the standpoint of what makes the most sense for me, even if you're not a diehard Royals fan, this does make more sense than having the Royals go to the East Village, which is no man's land in this town, and try to build their own entertainment district under the guise of, if you build it, they will come. Because all you're doing then is you're moving dollars around. You're taking dollars that would otherwise be spent at Power and Light or Zona Roast or anywhere else, right? And you're taking those monies and you're just putting them in a different part of town. That's all you're doing. If you put the stadium on the south side of that loop in the old Star building and you tap into Power and Light District, you may help out Power and Light District, which needs it, by the way. If you're a Kansas City resident, you're subsidizing Power and Light. You are subsidizing people coming in from outside of Kansas City, Missouri, people coming in from Johnson County to go drink at, you know, the country nights events at Power and Light. That's what you're doing because Power and Light does not make money. The city spends, I believe the mayor has said on this show, 15 to 20 mil a year to subsidize that location. And if the Royals spending 81 nights a year, maybe playoffs, maybe, I don't know. It's possible. Hey, got Bobby Witt for the next 10 years, so let's see what happens. You've got 81 nights a year now to add to potential economic impact downtown. And that's something that if you're a taxpayer in this county, makes sense. Now, I know there's a lot of you that are going to say, I don't care. I want the team at Kauffman Stadium. I don't want them to leave. And I get it. I don't either. I've been to a handful of ballparks around the country, and it is right up there with the best of them in terms of ease of access, in terms of, walking around the ballpark, the feel that you get inside of Kauffman. I agree with you. But at this point, it's like complaining about Donald Trump ripping his opponents. It is who he is. The Royals are going to do what they're going to do. They are leaving. There's nothing that will get them to stay at this point. Now, there is this 3/8 cent sales tax extension that's going to be on the ballot come April. And, at this point, I don't see how that fails after the Chiefs just won a Super Bowl. The sales tax will be monies that are split 50-50 between the Chiefs and the Royals. And there's no way, I don't see how this town would reject a sales tax extension, not a new tax, but a sales tax extension for this baseball team and this football team right now in this town.
Right, and voting no or turning that tax down does not mean the Royals would stay at Kauffman Stadium.
Yeah.
So don't fall for that, or somebody tries to tell you that. That's not a choice. We don't have a choice in that matter of them staying at Kauffman Stadium at this point.
That's a good point. Yeah, if you think you're voting no to, I'm going to show them they're going to stay there whether they like it or not. No, their lease runs out in 2031, and of course the worst case is they end up leaving Kansas City. It's not likely. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen at all. I'm just saying that is the worst case scenario for this baseball team. So now we know where they want to be based on the Star reporting. The question is, what ultimately does that ballpark look like? Because there are still questions on whether or not there's even enough space in that Crossroads district to really get the size of a stadium that they want to have. So that's what's going to happen today at 2:30. We'll get a better idea as to whether or not this stadium is going to have any kind of amenities around it. I'm sure it will in some regard. But I got to imagine it's going to have a much more stripped-down entertainment district than what they initially wanted, which was a $2 billion project. I think that number is going to be coming down dramatically when all is said and done today.
And perfect timing after the Bobby Witt Jr. signing and after the Chiefs win right before the Super Bowl parade.
This, I said last week, right? It was either going to be Tuesday or Thursday. I said they won't do Monday no matter what after the Chiefs either win or lose a Super Bowl. Wednesday's parade day. You're not going to bury it on Friday. Tuesday or Thursday of this week made sense because people overseas can start voting for this sales tax extension on Friday. So you had to announce where you were going to be before Friday when people start voting on this thing. So they are doing it today at 2:30. The Star is reporting that it is going to be the old Kansas City Star building. I don't know how they got the inside scoop on that, but story for another day, I guess.
Do you think the Chiefs buses are going to have vote yes across the front of their buses or something?
No. See, they don't need to put vote yes on the buses. I mean, you just won the damn Super Bowl. You don't need to be doing that. That would be very pathetic if the Chiefs did that, Mark. I'm glad you're not in charge of the marketing there for the team this week. That would be so corny. That'd be like when, somebody hands you a coffee and they ask for a 40% tip. Buzz off. Now you're just pissing me off. Now I'm not even going to buy the coffee. Don't go down that road. That's bad advice. Do not take Mark's advice, Chiefs. Take his advice on 7th round draft picks, but don't take his advice on, marketing 101, please. All right. Coming up on KCMO, the White House is already trying to ride the Chiefs bandwagon. We'll share with you how. And plus, my wife got annoyed with me last night, over something I said on the show about Taylor Swift and her beer chugging abilities. So she wants to defend herself.
Finally saw the clip.
Yeah, exactly. She finally saw the clip, and she was very upset about it. So I'm going to get her on the show for a couple of minutes, and then we'll get to what the White House said about the Chiefs. Coming up next, it is 6:14 on a Tuesday morning on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM, and stream us on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Have you seen the video that's surfaced, gone viral, of Travis and Jason Kelce kind of, I don't know if stumbling's the right word, but walking out of the club they were at after the Super Bowl? And Jason looks like he's about to fall into a bush at some point. I mean, Jason is like every young dad that gets his night out with the boys and doesn't realize his tolerance level is half of what it used to be in his heyday. I mean, it's okay, Jason. We've all been there. So Chiefs obviously had themselves a celebratory last couple of nights. And one of the videos that went viral from the Super Bowl was the Taylor Swift beer chugging video that I put up on Twitter, now X. Guess that was 2 nights ago. And it's Taylor on the Jumbotron chugging a beer. And as I said yesterday on the show, and I think John and Mark would agree, that was an impressive chug. You got to hand it to her, right?
Especially compared to who she was sitting next to, who couldn't. It was like a sit for them.
Yeah.
Who was
that? Was it
Ice Spice or was it the other girl?
Blake Lively or I don't know who that was. Yeah, it must have been. It wasn't Ice Spice because I'm looking at the video now. But yeah, you're right. She chugged it. She slammed that cup down emphatically. I thought it was a pretty good chug. I was impressed coming from Taylor Swift, So last night before bed, we were talking about the video, and Kate said to me, hey, I could definitely chug a beer better than Taylor Swift. And I'm like, really? You're that confident in yourself? And she said, yes. So I said, fine. You want to come on the show and tell that to the audience? Let's do it. So we had to do it before the kids woke up, by the way. Can't do that with the kids screaming in the background. That's not going to be fun. All right, so defend yourself, Miss. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, good morning.
So you are very confident that you could out-chug Taylor Swift on that Jumbotron.
Yes, actually. I can't believe I don't know if we've ever talked about this. Maybe this is like a new development in our marriage, but I like out-chugged boys in college. So,
well, that doesn't surprise me. I will also add to that when we would, in our heyday in college, when we met, usually if we went to like some of those events like formals, one of us would pass out in the back of the bus, and it was usually me.
Yeah.
Do you remember that, right?
That's totally accurate.
That is very accurate.
That is
yes.
totally accurate.
It was usually me who was getting, dragged in at the end of the night. It wasn't her. Usually you think of the knight in shining armor. Well, it was usually the other way around. I was getting dragged in from somewhere. So that is true, and I am not surprised by that. But let's be honest. Your chugging days have long gone. Now, if I give you a sip of my beer, you want to puke the whole thing up.
Yes, I mean, that is true. I've been out of practice for a while, and I don't know what kind of beer she was drinking. I mean, we were drinking I know this is blasphemy now, but Bud Light and Natty Light in college. So if she was drinking a full heavy beer, I don't know if I could take her, but I think if I had a little bit of practice.
It looked like a Michelob Ultra or a Bud Light or something like that. Okay. That's what it looked like to me.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think that in your heyday, you probably could have out-chugged her. But I don't know this. So maybe I'm afraid to ask. What's the best story of you out-chugging a guy in beer in college?
The best story? I don't know if there's one that sticks out of my mind, but all of my friends know. You could ask any of them. We could call one of them right now.
No. Let's not do that.
They could, yeah, I don't know. But I'm just saying, I and my sister too. My sister is very good at this too. So there's no specific story, but I was just known to be able to chug a beer, and if there was ever a challenge at a party, or whether it was with our sorority sisters or with frat guys, I could take them.
All
easily.
Right. I know that. I believe that. And
Greek week, right? In Villanova. Get Kate.
Yeah. It's like getting Mariano out of the bullpen.
I don't know. I think we're gonna have to put proof in the pudding and do this post baby. I feel like this is gonna have to happen somehow.
Politics in a pint.
Yeah, politics in a pint. We'll do a beer chug.
The baby will be born by then.
The baby will be. Yeah. Oh boy. We'll. All right. Now we got to figure out something.
And honestly, you know what? I think something tells me that Kylie Kelsey could definitely take her too. So
yes, I agree with that. I think Kylie's kind of girl that would drink you under the table. I do agree with that.
Yeah. I think we probably are both out of commission with both having 3 kids, well, us soon. But, something tells me. So we'll give Taylor her 15 minutes of chugging fame, but
all right.
We'll see.
Well, let's put it. Let's have a happy, healthy baby first. Put a pin in that, and then if we can find time for a chugging contest after the baby, we'll do that.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. See you later.
All right. Bye.
All right. There you go. That is my wife telling me things that I remember, but maybe don't want to remember sometimes. John, you know how it goes.
Drank the O-line at Villanova. Beat the center in a chug contest.
Well, it's funny how life changes over time, isn't it? Right? You kind of forget about those days. But I do remember that. But, yeah, I mean, if we were at an event, if one of us was bound to maybe have a little too much and need some help at the end of the night, it was me. So that's just how it goes. But now, I still enjoy plenty of beers. But her, not so much. Now the White Claws and the Tito's are kind of the way of the world, I guess you would say. So we'll have to see. All right, some of you are already texting in saying caller of the day. That's not... I agree with that, caller of the day, as of 6:26 this morning. We announce our caller of the day every day at 9:30, so stay tuned for that. Pete, one important question for Kate. Is her sister single? The answer is no. Sorry there, Chief. The answer is no, not single. So you're going to have to keep searching for your own beer-drinking girl. That's how it goes. So speaking of Taylor, yesterday, Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about Taylor Swift at the White House. And here's what the White House press secretary had to say about the Super Bowl.
Hope everyone got some rest after last night's Super Bowl. The president was able to catch some of the game. And on his behalf, I want to extend a big congratulations to...
Wait, hold on. Some of the game? Do you hear that? Joe didn't catch the entire... the game ended at, 11:15 Eastern time. 11 o'clock, give or take. Joe didn't catch the entire game? What the hell is this guy doing?
You missed the best part.
What, he watched the first half when everyone was kicking field goals and nobody was doing anything?
He probably thought the Niners won.
Oh, my goodness. Karine Jean-Pierre just admitted that Joe Biden did not watch the whole Super Bowl.
Kansas City Chiefs on their third Super Bowl win in just 5 seasons. And also congratulations to all the Swifties out there. The president looks forward to welcoming them back once again to the White House to celebrate their latest victory. As you know, it is a White House tradition.
You started the briefing by wishing congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs as well as to all the Swifties out there. I'm wondering, when the Chiefs are invited to the White House, does the White House intend to also invite Taylor Swift?
That's going to be up to the Chiefs and obviously their decision.
All right, Karine Jean-Pierre. Could you imagine? They'd be doing cartwheels if Taylor showed up to the White House. I don't believe that she will whenever that invite happens. I hope she doesn't, because I don't want to see them get what they want. But, man, they are thirsty for some Taylor Swift, because that's all they got. So while you were sleeping, the U.S. Senate just spent $100 billion. $95 billion of your money for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. Not a dime of this money, as far as we know right now, it literally just passed here in the last hour, is going to the southern border. Nothing. Now, of course, we know the Senate was trying to negotiate a bill for the southern border and then also monies for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan last week. That went nowhere fast. So now they stripped it down. That was a $120 billion bill, I want to say. That included $20 billion for border security along our own southern border. So now they figured out a way to make it worse. It's less money, but it literally doesn't do anything for the borders of our country. Not a dollar. So $95.3 billion aid package, that's the final number. And it's for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. The bulk of that is going to Ukraine. 22 Republicans voted with nearly all the Democrats to pass this in the U.S. Senate, 70-29. And the 22 Republicans voting yes, Mitch McConnell, Mitt Romney, and yes, Jerry Moran here in the state of Kansas. The other 3 local senators, Roger Marshall, Eric Schmidt, and Josh Hawley, were no votes. Now, some of you are already tweeting me saying, Pete, can you get Jerry on the show to defend this thing? I can try, but it's highly unlikely. I mean, Jerry's always welcome on the show. He's a friend of this show, and I think he's overall a good guy. I do. I think he's been very good for the state of Kansas. And listen, he won his last reelect by 20 points. So Kansans overall like the job that he's doing. I disagree with him on this vote. And by the way, I'm not someone who has been anti-Ukraine out of the gates. I actually think that helping out Ukraine makes sense. But the optics of continuing to have a wide open border that is flooding 8.5 million people into this country over the last 3 years or so, with no idea who or many of them are, and then to turn around and spend another $100 billion in other countries to protect their own borders is just the most insane and ridiculous and, in many ways, anti-American thing you can think of. By the way, we don't have $95 billion. We're just printing money. This is now grandkids' money, great-grandkids' money who don't exist. It's not even real money. It's funny money that they're just printing and sending overseas. As our dollar continues to go in the crapper and get us less and less far on a daily basis. So now, I mean, it's just classic Congress in the middle of the night while you're sleeping, while you're resting, and you're just getting up this morning and you're, filling up your coffee and hitting the road and streaming us on the KCMO Talk Radio app, or maybe you're already in the car on 95.7 FM. You know that you are going to a job and the government's taking some of your money. And today the government just decided to ship $95 billion overseas to Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel. And I'm all about helping Israel and our friends over there, and the needs that they have are real, and we should help them. And by the way, that's why Bernie Sanders did not vote for this. Bernie Sanders voted against this. Why? Because he didn't want to send weaponry to Israel. So there were a couple of progressives that voted against it. Jeff Berkeley of Oregon and Peter Welch of Vermont, who also voted against this thing because they didn't want to give any dollars to Israel. That's why they voted against it. I sit here and I say, I'll help Ukraine. Do I think they've had enough? I don't know. I got to figure out what the heck the end game is here. I'm not going to keep giving them a blank check. That's not of interest to me. I just want to know what the plan is. And then Israel, yeah, I'll help them as well. Taiwan, sure. They're critical to, our interests in that part of the world as it relates to China. But to have a bill knowing what's going on our southern border and not have a dime in it, and for it to pass and for Republicans to go along with it and not have any plan, it seems like for our southern border, is absolutely comical. And now, wait to see what happens in the House. It might not go anywhere in the House anyway, so this might be a moot point. But it's also why Republicans, I don't know what's going to happen here in the White House with the president's race this year, but I do know this much. You better hang on for dear life to the House of Representatives. 913-408-7957 as we approach 7 o'clock on KCMO. Let's go to the phones and the text line. Victor's in Parkville. He kicks it off. Hello, Victor. Good morning.
Good morning, Pete. You kind of had a misrepresentation there. You said in the last $120 bill that they had $20 billion that was supposed to go for border securement. No, that was the big problem that a lot of the senators had. It wasn't for securement; it was for processing illegals. So that was the big issue. They didn't really want to put anything into securing the border, building a wall.
They were gonna hire more guards. They did have money for border patrol.
Hire more guards to process more illegals. That's basically what it was all about. And Senator Marshall was on over the weekend, I believe it was, and he was all dressed up in his regalia. He was on Sunday before the game, I believe it was, and he pointed it out great. First fix the border. He goes, I'm against all this stuff. You can't, just like what you said, stop sending money to everywhere else. Let's fix home first. Mm-hmm. Let's fix the border first. Then we can start sending money overseas.
Yeah.
And that's exactly correct. And that's exactly why I respect what he did. And I'm glad that the two Missouri senators were on board with that. I am very disappointed in Senator Moran. I know maybe he's not as big a conservative as I would like him to be, but for the most part, he is on the right side of things. I'm very disappointed in his vote on this. I don't understand it.
Yeah. And listen, I think his office is going to hear from a lot of Kansans today. Thank you, Victor, who are not happy with his vote on this either. But once again, it may go nowhere in the House of Representatives. So I don't want to say it doesn't matter, because obviously how these people vote is important to us, important to you, and matters. But if there's a silver lining here, it's that the money may not actually end up being spent or going to Joe Biden's desk. And, while I think that those are three worthy efforts, Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, man, the optics of it are just horrific. Pete, you guys had some border legislation in the other bill. Well, as Victor noted, it was as flawed a border legislation as you could possibly have. So we've got the CPI report. Inflation comes in at 3.1% in January. Now, you might look at this and say, inflation's down. And that is true. Inflation is down. But remember, inflation being down from 9% doesn't mean inflation is where it needs to be. So there's going to be two ways that you see this reported today. One is inflation cools. It's cooling down. The other way to look at it is inflation is still 50% above the target of the Fed. Meaning the Fed wants inflation to be about 2% a year. That's their goal, to have inflation at 2% a year. That way, prices keep going up a little bit, but it's not astronomical. And you build that in with wage increases and everything stays okay. That's the theoretical plan for the Fed. And we have not had 2% inflation in a very long time. You got to go back to early 2021 to get to 2% inflation. Trump left, it was 1.6. For most of his tenure, it hovered right around 2. And then, of course, it skyrocketed in 2021 to 5 to 9. Now we're back down around 3. So I don't look at this and say, well, 3% inflation is great. Prices are not going down, right? If anyone tells you prices are going down, they're lying or they don't understand economics. It's one or the other. What this means is prices are not going up as quickly as they were a year and a half ago, which, by the way, was an astronomical rate. You could make this, tallest midget argument, which is probably appropriate, although I'm not sure you can use those anymore. But anyway, you get the point here. So this is basically what we expected. We expected this number to come in around where it was, but it's still way too high. I don't see it being all that sustainable. And it was slightly above the expectations of what the Fed expected. They thought it'd be at about 3. It came in at 3.1. So here we are now with the CPI report. Now, what does it mean for the Fed? I don't think it means anything. I think the Fed already knows it's going to cut rates in the spring or summer, and they'll justify it in any way possible. They're not going to do it in March. They're not going to come out in March and say, we're going to cut the rates next month. That's not going to happen. Jerome Powell's already signaled that next March is a no-go. But they may do it in May. And I'm not convinced the economy is going to be in a place where they should start cutting rates in May, but I don't see it stopping them, because I think Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, is intent on cutting interest rates in any way that he can at any time that he can. And he's going to justify it by any means possible. So when you look at some of the increases here that drove that 3% inflation, transportation up 9.5%, shelter up 6%, that's rent and whatnot. Food away from home up 5%, that's eating out at the restaurants, which continues. We talked about how the Big Mac meals are now pushing $20 in some parts of the country. It's insane. It's just nuts. We went out. What did we do? Takeout on, I guess that would have been Saturday night. Chloe was still getting over a little sickness, and, it It was one of those days when you got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. You've all been there. So it's like we didn't do takeout, right? So I'm not going to call the place out because we really like it. But it's like, what did I get? Buffalo chicken wrap, fries, cake, salad, chicken on top. Throw in the taxes. And it was like $33. Like, don't get me wrong, it was good. But I'm just sitting there, I'm like, okay, 4 years ago, this was maybe $25. Maybe $25. You know, buffalo chicken wrap with some fries, maybe 10, 11, maybe $11.50, I don't know. Salad with chickens, maybe $12. Throw in a couple dollars in tax. You're looking at $25. It's like $33 and change, pushing $34. And then you get the old, how about a 20% tip? No, this is not COVID, sorry. We're not doing 20% tips on takeout anymore when you guys have increased your prices by 30% the last couple of years. I ain't doing that, sorry.
Suddenly it turns into Pawn Stars, best I can go is 20.
Don't even get me.
Would you go 25? No.
Don't even get me started. Electricity up 4%. Overall CPI up 3.1%. Food at home up 1%. So once again, it's becoming cheaper to eat at home. I mean, it's always been cheaper to eat at home, but you're certainly seeing that increase in food at home far below the increase in food away from home. New cars up a fraction of a percent. Same with medical care. Used cars off 3.5%. Gasoline down 4%. So that is one good thing going on right now. Gas prices down a little bit. Fuel oil off 14% and gas utilities off 18%. So that's how they end up with the 3.1% overall inflation that we got this month. But, I know a lot of people are going to be celebrating this. I'm not sitting here looking at this and saying to myself, wow, this is a great inflation report. It comes in basically at the expectations, a little hotter than the expectations. And it shows me that even in this higher interest rate environment, now, I know some of you are going to say, oh, just go back to the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. Those were high rates. I know. But based on the last 20 years, I mean, most of us who are working adults, especially those of us on the younger end, we did not experience the late 70s and early 80s. So this is the highest interest rate environment we've ever seen. And I don't see how, if you're Jerome Powell, you could look at this scenario and say to yourself, you know what? Let's cut these rates. Let's do it. No way, no how. Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio. It is great to be here on a Tuesday. We've got Tirade Tuesday coming up in a half hour. Don't miss that. Next, Dan Bongino is on this station every day at 12 o'clock. I love Dan, but I think he totally missed the boat on this Taylor Swift thing. I'll explain it next. I love Dan Bongino. He's on the station 12 to 2 every day on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7. When we flipped and moved over to 95.7, that was one of the big moves that we made. And Dan has been a welcomed addition to this radio station. He joined us our first day on 95.7. However, when it comes to this whole Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, Kansas City Chiefs, Joe Biden, election 2024 drama, Dan went on a mini rant yesterday that I appreciate, but I vehemently disagree with. Because Dan and I view the world the same way. And Dan and I would love to see more people in Kansas City and around the country view the world the way we do. And one of the ways to do that is to use this Taylor Swift story in your favor, to highlight it for the good that it can potentially be, instead of dismissing it as some kind of pop culture story that is generally meaningless. It's not. So here's what Dan said yesterday. I was listening to the show, as I do each and every day. Said this at about 12:30, and then we'll dive into it and break it down here on KCMO.
If you told Joe Biden he was Dark Brandon, he don't even know. He's like, that's me. Who's Brandon? Let's go, Brandon. Remember him? Let's go, Brandon, for real, or whatever he said. He don't even know. This is so it's the cringiest thing I've ever seen. I bring it up because right before I got on the air this morning, I saw one of his team, they put out this like Dark Brandon meme about Taylor Swift and the Super Bowl. I don't give a damn about Taylor Swift. Who cares about Taylor Swift? We joked at the beginning of the show. We will spend zero time on the Super Bowl or Taylor Swift, or what do they call him? Trailer now? Travis Kelce, like Bennifer or whatever. I don't care. I don't care. That's not what we're doing on the show. The world is a serious, important place. You got a major election tomorrow in Nassau County, Long Island. Get out and vote. There's a special election to replace George Santos.
It's awfully ironic to say, we don't care about Taylor Swift, literally the most talked about person in the world the last 48 hours, and say, let's talk about an election that doesn't matter to 98% of the country. But, I digress.
Yeah.
Anyway, Dan is amazing, but he is not seeing the forest for the trees here. And here's what I mean by that. Sometimes you have to go fishing where the fishes are, to use two straight analogies. And what I mean by that is, if you want, what's a big complaint right now by traditional Americans? These younger people, they don't see the world the way I do. And gosh, they're a bunch of dopes. And God, boy, if it wasn't for them, the country would be a lot better. Okay. And by the way, there's a lot of that sentiment that I'll concur with. So now you have this incredible pop culture moment mixed with the NFL and mixing with politics. And to ignore it and to avoid it and to keep banging a drum on national politics and not try to fish where the fishes are to get more people to see the world the way you do by using this Taylor Swift story to do just that is a completely missed opportunity. It's kind of like, when I'm teaching my kids the alphabet, right? What do? What do we have in the house? Well, you try to teach them the way they're most likely to be taught. It's not me taking a pen to paper to teach them the alphabet. It's having those puzzle boards that have A, B, C, D, and they can take them out and they can put them back, and they can learn the alphabet doing it that way. If you want to take young Swifties and try to have them see the world the way you do, it would make sense to try to talk to them and talk with them and converse with them and embrace the story and explain why this story of two people in a very heteronormative relationship that is in many ways as traditional as it gets, that signifies an enthusiasm for traditional American values in Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, embracing that, talking about it, and making sure your political opponents don't get to own the story for their own political gain can be wildly valuable. And for Dan to completely miss that point is a missed opportunity for him. Because by not doing that, by not embracing that, by not trying to bring those people into your umbrella and see the world maybe the way you do, or at least have their eyes open a little bit and be like, no, there's really serious things. Yeah, I know there are serious things going on. Obviously, we talk about them every day too here in Kansas City. But to miss the opportunity does not allow you to grow in the way we want to see our values grow across the country, and our beliefs and the way we see the world grow across the country. And you're allowing your political opponents to completely take over that pop culture moment. And that's one thing that traditional Americans have, frankly, completely missed the boat on for generations now. They ignore it. They say, who cares about that? A bunch of celebrities, blah. Yeah, okay, I get it. It's not helping any of us buy groceries or put food on the table or any of that. But you've allowed everything Hollywood and everything pop culture to be corrupted and owned by left-leaning, whether it's politicians or elites or Hollywood folks. And then you wonder why the world is the way it is. It's time to go fishing where the fishes are and actually make a point out of this massive pop culture movement that potentially benefits you politically instead of ignoring it. It's just stupid.
Well said. Point well taken, sir. I think Dan sort of sounded like Bobby Boucher's mother in Waterboy, right? Foosball. We're not talking about no foosball today. He was just cranky.
Yeah, well, that's,
You know.
trust me, we're all cranky sometimes, and
Yeah.
occasionally it leaks out on the air.
Maybe
We've all
he was
been
a
there.
Niners fan.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the Super Bowl today. We're in Nassau County. Come on, man.
Come on. I love you, Dan.
Which will have more people participating.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
Most watched game
Most watched game.
or a county election.
Did you see the ratings for this game? I mean, unbelievable numbers. 123 million. That's right. 123 million people tuned in to the Super Bowl, making it the most watched television event ever. The largest audience ever in any telecast in history. But enough about that. There's a big election in Nassau County today. 913-408-7957. Our Tirade Tuesday is coming up at the bottom of the hour. Whatever you want to rant and rave on, all right, that's your opportunity. At 8:35, it's a 10-minute segment every week. It doesn't have to be news or anything at all political. It's just, hey, you go into the office and some jerk cut you off. I don't care what it is. Those are sometimes the best. Your trash didn't get picked. I don't know. Whatever it might be on your mind. Tirade Tuesday is the 10 minutes we set aside every week for you to take this show in whatever direction you want. 913-408-7957. That's 15 minutes away on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Meantime, the Kansas City Royals have a big announcement today at 2:30, and we're pretty sure what it's going to be. We'll tell you next. Royals are going to do the right thing here, it looks like, at 2:30 this afternoon. There will be a press conference at Kauffman Stadium, and they are going to announce, per the Kansas City Star, that they are going to move, or their plan is to move, to downtown Kansas City and the old Kansas City Star building on the south side of the Loop, not the East Village, which is no man's land downtown, and always was a weird choice and a weird site. And, you know, there were barriers there that didn't make a whole lot of sense. It's frankly not a part of town that a lot of people want to spend a lot of time in. And then magically, or not so magically, this KC Star building, which was in the running a year and a half ago. And then the Royals cut their list down to two, and they said, we're going to go to the East Village or we're going up to Clay County. And that was the final two as of last summer. And then, in the last few months, the Royals nixed Clay County, in large part because I don't think Clay County was going to give them the sales tax dollars that they wanted. And they said, let's keep looking downtown. And then the Star building came back into the equation. Tony Privatera is the family that owns the building, and they got back into the conversation. And now it looks like they are going to be selected at 2:30 today, per the Kansas City Star, as the future home of the Royals. And it makes all the sense in the world. In large part just because the East Village spot makes no sense. And then secondarily because, well, you'll get this ballpark that ties into T-Mobile, that ties into Power and Light District. I hope the Royals don't build the dopey entertainment district that they've insisted on building. I know they think they have to make money from beer and food and condos and office space, but office space is a dying industry right now. Nobody wants commercial office space. Why would you? Office space, you're going to see a lot of defaults on office space here in the next couple of years when leases start coming up. So there's no way office space is a winning formula right now for any business. And then maybe they build a few rentals around the ballpark. That's fine. But once again, they don't need bars, or at least a lot of bars and a lot of restaurants, because they can tap into Power and Light. And Power and Light is a district that loses money. You as a Kansas City taxpayer should like this idea of the Royals going to the old Star building, because then maybe Power and Light can start making money, or at least losing less money, and you as a taxpayer can stop subsidizing Power and Light, which you do right now. I mean, we all see Power and Light like after the Super Bowl, right? When it's shoulder to shoulder, packed to the gills, life is good, place is bumping. But that's not really how it is most of the time. I mean, most of the time, it's a ghost town. And I say that as someone who used to live down there and would kind of walk by it every day and say, not a lot happening here. Not a big lunch crowd from people, working downtown, even less now post-COVID. So you really only get those big crowds, Big 12 tournament, big Chiefs games. They do some of the, concerts, country music shows, things like that. That's it. That's all you got. So if you're looking at this, if you're a Kansas City, Missouri taxpayer, and even if you say, screw this, I want them to stay at the K, I don't blame you, but it's not happening. If you can get them to this location and save yourself money in the process by extending a sales tax, not adding a tax, but extending a tax that's currently in place that gets split between the Royals and the Chiefs, that's a win-win for everybody.
I wouldn't be surprised if John Sherman, the Royals owner, says something about maybe buying the Power and Light or subsidizing somehow today.
Is that what your Royals insiders are telling you, Mark?
That's just my own head. I guess I'll call myself the insider there.
I think you're onto something. And what I would be open to seeing, and I don't know how complex this would get, but some kind of revenue share with Power and Light when the Royals have games down there. Like whatever. The Royals get maybe 50% of the revenue. Whatever. I don't know. Fine. Someone much smarter than me is going to be able to figure this out. But something like the Royals get a share of revenues on nights when they have games downtown from alcohol and food sold at Power and Light District. Something along those lines. Where they're able to make money on things that are not happening inside the stadium, which is the whole point of why they wanted to build this entertainment district around the ballpark. But the footprint of that Crossroads site, of that Star building, doesn't really allow for it. There's barely room for a stadium, as far as we can tell. So I don't see how they could build a district around it, but I think they also realize this. The money's not there for them like they thought it was going to be. They're going to get this 3/8 sales tax extension, which will end up being a few $100 million or more, but it won't pay for a $2 billion with a B dollar project that they wanted originally 18 months ago. And that was basically $1 billion for the stadium and $1 billion for the district. That money's not there. The state, Mike Parson, when he put out his budget, had no money for the Chiefs of the Royals. And the reason he did that was a political calculation. He knew that some of the people running against, I believe, his preferred candidate for governor, and Mike Kehoe, would have blown a gasket if there were millions of dollars set aside for sports teams in Kansas City. They would have had a huge talking point politically, so Mike Parson didn't do it, which was probably a smart thing to do. On top of it, I accept kicking in some local monies for sports teams. I think there's value in having a team in Kansas City that wins you Super Bowls, that brings you, the kind of marketing and advertising that you can't buy on the world stage. I do see value in that. I know that the think tanks who are the purists, who I love them but don't really live in the real world, will go, it doesn't matter, you kid, there's no return on investment. Listen, I don't know how you quantify it necessarily, but if you don't think the Chiefs winning Super Bowls has been good for Kansas City and growing business, I don't know. I can't help you. I just think it's very obvious it has done well. So I don't mind kicking in, whether it's hotel taxes or occasional sales taxes, as long as they're not too big. I understand that. But I would draw the line at saying, okay, you're not going to kick in local taxes and then state dollars and everything else under the sun. At some point, you have to draw the line and say, no. You do have to pay for some of your own damn stadium. We'll help you out as a municipality or as a county, but we're not paying for the whole darn thing. I'm sorry. Small business doesn't get that in Kansas City or anywhere, so why should you? But I do think that there's a gray area there, and there's a way to negotiate this that works out well for everybody. I don't think it's as black and white as some people want to make it out to, where either you give up the farm because there's nothing more important than sports, or I will never give a dime to a sports team no matter what. I think there's a way to actually find a happy medium that does work for everybody. And I'm hoping that this is what we're looking at for the Royals and the city and the county.